Hey, everybody, welcome to the YMS Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Colin Mansfield. I'm joined, as always, today by the illustrious Seve Carnera. Say hi to the people, Seve.
Hey, Colin, good to see you. Hello, everyone. Great being here again.
Absolutely. We've got a good show today. Today, we are bringing another topic. Every 2 weeks, we bring a new topic about logistics and supply chain industry, but specifically through the lens of yard management. As we've talked about several times on the show, yard management is one of those holes in the supply chain. Some people call it the black hole of the supply chain, where unfortunately a lot of companies focus on the warehouse and they focus on over the road drivers. That's as it should be, but unfortunately a lot of times they miss the piece that matches or that links both of those, which is the yard. And so because of that, a lot of facilities, unfortunately, warehouses, distribution centers, and even production plants are without a dedicated yard management system, resulting in having to use things like paper and pencil and spreadsheets and radios and clipboards to keep track of what is in their yard, where are trailers, and they have to do a ton of yard checks or temp checks for reefer facilities to get at what's going on at my facility. A dedicated yard management system solves all of that, and we've been talking about a lot of the ways and a lot of the results of implementing a yard management system and the impact that can have on a facility. Today, we are specifically focused on one of the scourges the of the industry, really, which is detention fees, driver detention, demurrage as well, and how that kind of happens, how a YMS system can prevent detention fees and can eliminate 95% of them. You'll hear me use that statistic again here in a few minutes. But before we kind of get into all of the good things about how we can prevent detention fees, I wanted to take a step back really and talk through what are detention fees, what are demurrage fees, and get kind of set up some context so we can go a little deeper. Seve, do you want to give kind of a 20,000 foot view of what's driver detention, what's demurrage, and how does this usually come into play and affect the industry and affect operations around the world?
Yeah, sure, Colin. So, quite simply, from a detention and demurrage standpoint, demurrage typically involves yards that are at ports where containers are coming off of ships, and basically they have a certain amount of time that they can free that particular container and send it off to the facility that it's going to. Detention, which is the area that we really focus in on, is how long a customer has the ability to keep that container or trailer in their yard. Now, it comes in many different flavors. Different carriers treat it different ways with different customers. It could involve the type of trailer. Is it a reefer? Is it a dry trailer? Is it a 53 footer versus a 40 footer? Different rates would be applied based on those different types of categories of trailers. And then you also get what's called free time, which is what's available for you to be able to load or unload that particular unit and then have it ready to be sent back to the carrier so that they can then use it again for whatever purposes they have there in the future. But essentially, those are rules around each of those different types of trailers, etc. And then in addition to that, like I said, carriers all have different contracts with their customers to determine what those rates will be. So in essence, we take that information within our system, and that is how we help our customers manage that as well.
So without a YMS, how are a lot of operations tracking detention now? And what are they doing? What are the methods that you see, Seve? I mean, you've got over 10 years of experience working in yard management. So when you go and you do a site visit with a customer who's doing yard management the old-fashioned way, what do you normally see as far as the methods that they use to track detention?
Yeah, and that's the biggest challenge, Colin, because to your point, a lot of times they don't have a really good, rigorous way of tracking that stuff. And they might try on a spreadsheet or reports or some other thing that they have access to. But the majority of times when I've heard this story before, they get a bill from the carrier stating, hey, you owe us $1,000 for detention fees. And then they have to go back and try and get that information somehow to identify how long that trailer was in the yard. Many times that's going back to the gate, going through paper in and outs of how they check in those trailers on pen and paper. to determine when that trailer actually arrived. And then they also try and determine how long it actually stayed in that yard. That can be a big challenge for a lot of organizations, especially if you have a lot of trailers in your yard. So, needless to say, I've seen both ends of the spectrum. Some customers, I've never seen a customer that can handle it easily. Some customers can get to that final number and then be able to decide, okay, whether or not we actually owe this bill or not. Most of the times, what I've seen though, Colin, which is crazy, is that those companies will take that bill. They won't even try to go back and determine whether it's an actual bill that they should pay or not, and they just pay the bill, which is frustrating because there are ways to manage that. There are ways to highlight that, and in addition to that, there's ways that YMS systems can help them identify those situations even before they occur. So, again, it's difficult for a lot of these customers to try and manage that on their own without a true system there to manage it for them.
So what's the impact of that? I mean, if you're having to go through a stack of paper at a gate just to fight a single detention fee, let alone however many carriers you're dealing with and whatever the frequency is, with which they send those fees out, what's the impact that you see from a lot of operations that are paying out the nose in detention?
Yeah, so the impact for that is obviously a lot of wasted cost on their part. Having to pay these carriers for these fees that they could easily manage in better ways. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's bottom dollars. I mean, at the end of the day, it's bottom. At the bottom line is dollars. They're going to spend all sorts of money on detention and demurrage fees. Detention in this particular case within yards. And the frustrating part for it, like again, like I stated, and I know you feel the same way as well too, is that there's ways to take care of this and manage this in much better ways. I personally will never tell a customer I will eliminate all your detention fees, but what I will tell them is, look, I will help you manage them so that if it comes down to you having a trailer in the yard that you're going to start incurring fees on because you'll know upfront prior to that happening, you can make an intelligent business decision at that point and decide, you know what, I'm going to need that trailer once it becomes empty for an outbound load. I'll go ahead and pay the 2, 3, 4 hours of that free time that I went over. And I have the ability to do that at that point. And then at that point as well, too, you have reports that you can print out and then determine what you're going to paying each of these carriers for detention fees. With that alone, you can then pay for the YMS solution alone in many cases for some of these customers that we're speaking to. And it never fails when I've spoken to customers with these issues. And when I ask them, hey, what's the bottom line of what you're spending on a year, let's say? And when they throw back numbers at me, my first response a lot of times is, you do realize that if you implement this solution, you can eliminate that and make money at the end of it as well, too. So, those are just some of the things that will encourage folks to try and look into solutions. But again, to your point, you got to get to, you can only lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. So, it really becomes an issue at the end whether they want to really investigate or invest in that type of solution to eliminate those detention fees. Because again, I don't think there's no reason in the world why some of those organizations cannot put in a system to manage that for them better and then make life easier for their employees too. Because I can't imagine being in the accounting department, getting a bill for $2,000 from a carrier for detention fees, and me having to go back to the gate, look through papers, identify when that trailer arrived, and then go through that entire history of that trailer while it was in your yard. You can imagine how hard and difficult that must be, and especially frustrating, especially for someone, again, in the accounting department having to deal with this.
Well, you brought up a lot of interesting things. I want to dive into them deeper. I've spoken with companies, and they've never used these exact words, but I've spoken with a lot of companies who, when they first reach out to our company, Yard Management Solutions, and they're looking for a way to help manage their yard and detention fees, more often than not are a big piece of that. They're treating detention, unfortunately, in the yard as kind of the cost of doing business a lot of times. Yeah. Now, by the time they're speaking to us, they've acknowledged that this is an issue that is potentially solvable. But up until that point, it's sort of treated as like, well, to drive a car, you got to use gas. To run a warehouse, you got to pay detention. That's just what happens. And while that may be true up to a certain level, to your point, if you're making an informed decision on what detention to pay and why, that's one thing. But if it's you're just getting bills in and you're paying them just because you're treating it almost like your electric bill or your gas bill, there's a problem, right? There's a big
Yeah.
problem there, and it really comes back to a lot of what we've been saying in these podcasts, which is visibility. How can we give our customers, operations that run thousands of trailers through their yard, uh, the visibility they need to make the right decisions? And in regards to detention, a big thing that I want to talk about is how we do that, right? How does our yard management system help fight that detention? And I think that'll help paint the picture of how, when we get into case studies and talk through some examples of how these customers have saved enormous amounts of money. Um, and it really comes down to keeping track of what's in the yard, when did it arrive, when did it get loaded, and being able to present that information in easily digestible ways. So in our software, how we do it is there are custom detention rules that any facility can set up. We're always happy to set them up for our customers before a go live, but they can be adjusted at any time. And those are based on a few factors. You mentioned several of the factors earlier. It could be the type of vehicle. It could be the carrier, certainly. It could also be whether it's a live load or a drop load at the facility. And those are handled differently
Yep.
as well. And then you're going to set up a timer that basically says, hey, what's the trigger and how long after that trigger should we alert you that detention is taking place? So if that trigger is a gate event, right, the gate check-in of that live load, for example, then that's when the timer starts. And we're simply going to count down from whatever time you want. That could be for a fast-moving facility, as little as an hour or two. For a drop facility, that could be 24, 48, 36, however many hours. And once that timer hits zero, we're going to alert the facility managers, the employees, a few ways. We're going to turn the trailer red. We're going to let them know, hey, this is a problem. You're paying money on this trailer. We're also going to send emails or text messages to relevant users or management, notifying them that you've got a problem in your yard. And of course, it's great to know when there's a problem. But earlier you mentioned, Seve, the ability to have forewarning, right, to make an informed decision.
Yep.
And so we have that built into our system as well. We put a little red stripe on it, on the icon of the trailer, letting you know, hey, this is approaching detention, but it's not there yet. So
Yep.
you've got layered alerts, right? Detention alert, pre-detention alert. Hey, this is going into detention in an hour or 24 hours. And then once it actually hits that detention threshold, we'll turn it that color and send out the emails or text messages. And so you're informed every step of the way. Moreover, those colors changing on EagleView are very obvious for users that are paying attention to the live interactive map, so you can see what's a problem and what's not. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what it is. I always tell our customers, hey, it's not waving a magic wand. It's really as easy as an automated tracking system, so that you don't have to sit there and hand jam everything on paper and pencil and then go through that stack of sheets when there is a problem. So
Yep.
that's the how, right? Seve, when it comes to reporting, right, and taking that data that's being live collected, right, that's great for in the moment decision making. But you mentioned earlier reporting on the other side, right? After you get that bill from a carrier, let's say, what impact does the ability to go back in time really easily on a report have on an operation who's struggling with detention?
Oh, it's incredible, Colin. I've had, customers report back to me that, it's not only was this successful implementation for our yard, but our accounting department now loves it because now they don't have to go back and go through that whole scenario that I explained earlier. Now they have a report that they can print out. They know exactly the hours that trailer was either over or under that detention span. If a carrier sends in a bill that's invalid, they have the ability to prove that now as well. And I'll share with you as well too that part of the feedback that I've gotten from customers as well too has been that once organizations or carriers understand and realize that, hey, they have a system of record now that tracks this stuff, they're much more cautious about sending a bill to that organization for detention fees because they know that there's a way of tracking this now. I can't begin to tell you how many times I've been on demo calls or calls with potential customers that when that question is asked, they say, yeah, we have issues with it. And when you ask them the question, how much are you spending a year? A lot of times they have no idea. And again, because to your point that you mentioned earlier, they think it's all a part of doing business and it's an accounting function that they don't need to worry about. But you're absolutely right. It does affect tremendously when those organizations put those solutions in, because the accounting department becomes much happier. The executives of that organization become much happier as well too, because now you're saving on cost that you can focus on other activities versus paying detention fees, and it just makes for a better environment altogether. So, those are some of the things that I've received back as feedback after implementing some of these solutions. And I know in our solution, we have a few other items in our roadmap as well too, which include the dollar amount that you're going to pay for that trailer being in the yard for too long. So, essentially at that point, you run a report, you can verify the amount on your report to the bill, and if they match, you're good to go and you move on. So you're not wasting a lot of time having employees, accounting individuals going and doing all this research on a particular unit just to determine whether or not there was detention or not on that specific piece of equipment.
It's amazing, really, when you think about the just how much automation in this space can help reduce friction. And last episode, which for those listening or watching this podcast, if you haven't checked out the last episode, please go do so. We talked a lot about sort of the soft benefits of YMS and how there's a lot of, reducing things like frustration, reducing stress that goes into, making your workforce happier and, improving employee retention and these sorts of things. This is really one of those hard savings, right? This is directly to what you said earlier, Seve. This is a dollars and cents savings. But I think to ignore the fact that you're going to make your accounting department a whole lot happier, you're going to reduce friction amongst your employees, and you're going to reduce the friction that can happen between yourself and outside vendors and outside carriers is huge, right? Is huge. So both are true, right? You get hard benefits in dollars and cents, but you also get these soft benefits as well. I want to talk through some case studies and success stories because we have some specific examples. I mentioned at the beginning, our customers often report back 95% reduction in detention fees. And here's what's interesting about this statistic is I was earlier last year, actually, I was at the F3 conference that FreightWaves puts on. And there were a whole lot of truck drivers that were there as well. And one thing that I realized in talking to these individuals who are really on the ground level, doing the Lord's work out there, and just really making it happen for our country and for the logistics industry, nobody likes detention. Nobody, right? The facility doesn't like it because it's an extra fee they got to pay, right? The carrier doesn't like it because they'd rather just have their asset back on time. And certainly the driver doesn't like it because they're sitting around waiting. So every single element of this chain benefits from reducing the friction that causes detention, right? And identifying what's about to be a problem and solving that before it actually starts charging your operation money. And I was really blown away by that because we say 95%, that is obvious, for a facility to take into consideration. What you don't realize is that actually everybody benefits who touches your facility. And so I wanted to throw that out there. We have a customer, Michelin Tire, who experienced some tremendous detention savings, and they shared them with us. We have a case study that's coming out very soon that'll be available for download on our website. At a single facility, one facility, they saved $450,000 annually, $450K from implementing our solution in detention and reduction, right? Incredible. Another facility, even a larger number here, $2.5 million savings in a single year at a single facility, right? So you take these numbers. Now, these may not be the types of numbers that every operation out there, right, considers. But here's the thing is that I want to call out is that it doesn't matter what end of the spectrum you're on, right? If you're paying just nickels and dimes and you're already doing okay, there's still unnecessary detention and friction that's happening that our system's going to help with. If you're paying a enormous amount and you just think, well, that's just our operation's big, that's just what happens with a big operation, I will tell you that's not the case. And just like Michelin experienced, you may have hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're literally leaving on the table, putting your organization in danger by not implementing a dedicated yard management system. So a few examples there, and again, case studies that may not apply to every organization, but are a really good window into the types of things you can expect to experience implementing a yard management system, starting with eliminating unnecessary detention in the yard. Seve, you mentioned earlier, and I'd love to pick your brain a little bit more about this.
Yeah.
Once carriers realize that there is a system of record, you mentioned that they're going to stop submitting so many detention fees. We've even had it reported to us that some of our customers have sort of swapped that script a little bit and have been able to tell carriers, hey, your trailers are actually here for too long or were arrived too early, and we're going to charge you for staying on our lot and taking up space. I'm curious, from your experience, taking an organization from paying out the nose to perhaps even charging, what has been the feedback that you've gotten from customers about implementing a YMS after the fact, after they experience these sorts of savings?
Yeah. No, I mean, it can be, easily described as, they're ecstatic about it. Because again, it makes a lot of sense when they're saving hard dollars and it becomes an easy process that they don't have to manage in some other way. And they're, being very successful about it as well too. I mean, those numbers that you just described are astronomical and unbelievable for some of these sites because, like I mentioned earlier, if you're spending that much money on detention, there's no reason why you can't put in a YMS system to offload that or offset that and still make money at the end of the day. So, I wish more organizations were aware of this. It's unfortunate some organizations that we speak to aren't even aware that they're paying fees on this as well too, and that can be disappointing as well. But again, it's incredible how much money can be saved by organizations by just using a simple tool to track the inbound appointment time or inbound arrival time of that piece of equipment and then understanding when it left. Because you're right, customers are being smart about it now, where they're putting in their contracts that, we're sending you emails now to inform you when those trailers are ready to be picked up. In our system, you have the ability to log into a portal and identify what the status of your trailer is, either through our Eagle View or the reports associated with it. So there's no excuse for you leaving your trailers out here so long. So you're right, they can start billing back. The other thing that a lot of organizations are not aware of as well too, and I try and share this as often as I can when I hear organizations are having issues with detention fees. Contracts can be written where if they're late for their appointment, guess what? All detention or demurrage fees are off the books at that point. Because they arrive late, there's no detention or demurrage. You guys are just going to get worked in, and they built that into their contracts as well too. I was surprised that a lot of organizations were not aware of that as well too. But there are other ways of also try to mitigate having to pay, exorbitant cost on detention fees when you do that within your contracts. But to your point, some organizations are making money back, by charging carriers for storing their trailers, and that's a very wise move on their part. And again, the carriers have no excuse because, again, now there is a system of record, number one, that tracks the detention fees. And then secondly, we'll also alert them to tell them, hey, come pick up this unit. It's been sitting out here for 3 days and it's ready to be pulled out of our yard.
There's a couple other things. Those are great points. There's a couple other things I wanted to highlight here. Some people who might be listening to this or watching this may be thinking, well, I work at a facility or I operate a facility, and we use all of our own assets. So detention's not really that big of a concern for us. It's not really something we need to, be wary of. What I will share is that we've had customers use this same feature set to help track simply what assets have been in their yard too long or what assets are going underutilized. For example, in our system, rather than setting up a rule that's carrier specific, you can set up the rule that applies to all carriers or all assets in the yard. And what that essentially does is it gives you a backstop. So maybe you want to know what trailers have been in the yard for longer than 72 hours, right? And that can give you insight into what's being utilized and what's not. You can set that detention rule up, and after 72 hours, have a very easy view of, okay, here's the trailers that have been sitting out there. Maybe we need to figure out why. Maybe there's a good reason, maybe there's not, and allow you to make full use of your full fleet. The other thing that I'll share is we have customers who ask us to integrate with their onboard, for example, GPS systems on their trailers, on their owned assets. And the great thing about this, and this is true whether or not the asset's owned, if we can integrate with the onboard GPS system, we can automate a lot of this even further than what we've already explained. And that's because we can draw a geofence around that facility so that when that asset comes in or out of that facility, it's automatically clocking in and clocking out. We're automatically time stamping when that asset arrives or leaves. And that then will trigger the detention rule as well. So if it automatically arrives, YMS will start that timer counting down. And if it's been in the yard for X amount of time, we'll let you know that that asset hasn't left. So just some really nice ways that we can help facilities gain visibility, even if detention isn't the primary concern. This functionality can be used to help track assets, anything having to do with time, anything having to do with utilization. So a couple additional call outs there for those that may not, the idea of having to pay detention fees may not totally resonate with you. That's okay. There's still challenges that this helps resolve.
Yeah, great points, Colin.
Wrapping up here a little bit, this is a bit of a maybe not shorter, but average length episode for us, I would say. Is there anything that you wanted to kind of leave the audience with here, Seve, in regards to implementing a yard management system for the purposes of things like detention, reducing fees? Any recommendations you would make to an operation that's suffering from these unnecessary fees that are avoidable?
Yeah, I mean, the only suggestions I can offer is, if you have those types of issues, look into a YMS solution that can, manage that for you. Again, I'm not going to sit here and I'm going to tell you that I will eliminate all your detention fees, but what I will tell you, and I feel very confident about this, is I will help you manage those situations very easily. Exactly what I stated earlier on the podcast. But essentially, those organizations need to be understanding and be truthful within themselves as well too, to identify whether these are issues. I think most organizations that we've spoken to, occasionally I'll get a response back that, well, we have detention and demurrage, but it's not an issue. Well, explain what it's not, why you're saying that it's not an issue. When you start adding dollars and cents, it starts to accumulate rather quickly. And, bottom line is that there's no reason to be spending that kind of money when there's a way to manage that and then correct the issues at the end of the day. There's been a lot of talk I've seen here lately about carriers, other types of activities being taken advantage of towards customers. And this is one of those areas as well too, that I hate to see organizations having to pay for exorbitant fees over something that can be managed again. And I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but it really comes down to a very easy process that can be managed with a solution. And even if that's your only pain point that you're currently experiencing in your yard, although I'm sure I could find more, it is a big one. And as a result of that, you should investigate into getting a system that can track that for you. And again, making life easier for those individuals that work within your organization, your accounting folks, your individuals at the guard check, your yard drivers, because it affects them as well too. Your C-level employees too, because they're going to see, hey, this is fantastic. We're saving all this money now, in addition to what we're saving because we implemented a yard management solution. So again, that's my advice to all of you out there that may be interested in looking for a solution. I'll be happy to discuss it at length. And Colin can tell you as well too. He would be as well too. We can talk about this to nauseum. So we'll be more than happy to discuss that and help you with those types of challenges because that's what we do and we love doing it.
Well, it's in our company name, right? And that's what I tell companies we meet with is yard management solutions. Look, there's nothing to be ashamed of. You're coming and seeking a system that's going to help you manage your yard better, help you make your workplace a better work environment for your employees, help you save money, help you save time, improve efficiency, get stuff where it needs to go faster. The first step is acknowledging where the issues are, right? And so, same thing that we tell operations that they go, a common answer. I say, well, how much do you think you're paying in detention? They go, I don't know, but I know it's too much, and that's fair and that's honest. We will help you, reduce that, all of the unnecessary fees, and streamline processes all around. So yeah, Seve is absolutely right. If you're interested in talking more, you can find us on LinkedIn, Colin Mansfield, Seve Carnera on LinkedIn. You can add us. We're happy to discuss. You can also go to our website, yardmanagementsolutions.com. There's a button on the top right hand that says schedule a demo. You can click that, get in touch with our team. We'd be happy to sit down, just do a site analysis with you, right? And offer you some suggestions, offer you some improvements, and provide you with a demo of our system so you can see how we're going to help your yard save even as much as $450,000, $2.5 million, simply by reducing and eliminating fees, detention and demurrage fees in your yard. So with that said, if you're interested in being on the show ever, hit us up. We always love talking to people. If you have experience managing a yard with and without a YMS, you want to share that, come on. If you're a vendor and you have a solution that you've seen can assist with this as well, we'd love to have you on the show. Hit us up. Otherwise, thank everybody for listening today, for watching this. Really appreciate the support. Give us a like, give us a subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day out there. We will see you on the next episode.
Take care, everyone.